Welcome to Cecil's Unknown Achievers. This podcast is all about hardworking entrepreneurs you've never heard of. This is the very first episode, and I'm pleased that I get to talk to an entrepreneur that I've personally known for years. He's a great guy with a great story. His name's Ricco Bertoletti, and he's the owner of Ricco's Repair Service. So let's get right into it. Welcome, Ricco.
Thank you, Cecil. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think it may be beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm hoping so, man. I'm like I was telling you before, when I had this idea to do this podcast years ago, I finally got off my butt and actually did it. You were the guy that I was thinking of because your story, and there's probably some of the story that I don't know, but I know a good bit of it. You know, how you started out and where you are today. I'm very impressed, man. And if I haven't told you that before, I am very impressed with what you've done.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate it.
So you are the first guest of Cecil's Unknown Achievers. How does it feel, man? Do you feel special?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, I was excited to do this, and I was. It's a nice compliment, you know. There's a lot of firsts going around when you start up a business.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's get right into it. Riccos Repair. Give us just tell us what you do. What's it all about?
Okay, so back in the 90s, high school, fixing machines was always a passion for me, and that progressed, went through life, lost my job because the little gas station I was working at closed, and I went to becoming a systems technician. So the majority of my life I've have an electrical background, and so cameras, burglar alarms, fire alarms, etc. That is what I did for the majority of my career, all the way up until I was about 43 or 44 years old. I was always content to work for somebody else. It was a very simple life. I got to be at all of my children's games. They had big, young children participating in their life were more important to me than owning a business. But a point came where there was no longer enough work. I was getting, 20 hours a week, maybe 25 hours a week. And my children got older. They all started getting into the age of going into college. And I had never I always lived check to check, week to week all my life. And came time to provide a way to get them into college and pay for it. Fortunately, at that time, my hobby, started turning into a business. And I could see a little bit more money was flowing in working for myself versus working for somebody else. Not a big difference at the time. I think when you first start up a business, you don't know how to bill, you don't know what you're worth, you don't know what to charge. So it just became more hours. And it took a while to translate that into actually making money and making this worth my time.
So let me interrupt you for just a moment. So Ricco's Repair Service really started out as a hobby of yours. What was your actual job when you started doing this on the side?
I installed mainly security systems and camera systems, fire alarm systems. By that point of being 25 years into my career, I was working more the commercial side, and I was very good at what I did. Mm-hmm. One of the very few people that were able to do some of the things that I do. So systems technician was what I did for 25 years.
Okay. And then what you sound like what I've known about you is you've always been a handy guy. Like you've been, like you said, electronics were your thing. What other kinds of things were you doing or how did you come to be so handy and knowing how to fix things?
I would take a lot of it from the way that I was brought up, my childhood, living, kind of grew up poor. And when things had to get repaired, you had to do them yourself. There wasn't the money or the option to bring it to somebody else to get repaired.
So is that a necessity that you kind of learned how to do these things?
Yeah, necessity. And my uncle, who's passed, was a senior scientist for Abbott Labs. I was not a very good kid, and I had to spend a summer with him. And that was probably the best summer that I ever spent, because that's when I learned the difference between diodes, rectifiers, transformers, half bridge rectifier, full bridge rectifier. I learned quite a bit in that one summer when I was 12 years old.
So you're speaking Greek to me already, man.
That was that knowledge never left me. It always stayed with me. So necessity out of having to do things for yourself because you couldn't afford to pay somebody else to do it, combined with having a great uncle who put a lot of knowledge into me. And then when I got into the high school years, I've got to give a lot of credit to the high school. Um, Back then, vocational programs were huge. And I've always known from a young age that I was going to go into the trades. So I was able to take metal, electric, autos two that I quickly progressed through. And they had a program called SOC. I went to Hillcrest High School, and SOC was a vocational school for kids that were beyond just basic mechanics,
Hmm.
beyond beyond small engines. And at SOC, I would leave at about 12 o'clock. That was a 3 hour course. And that was one class, 3 hours long. And I learned so much about engines at that point. We actually rebuilt engines in that program.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it was. Now, when I've worked in several high schools doing the systems technician at cameras and burglar alarms, the classroom. Every school has its own ability, but the schools do not have, from what I've seen, the ability of what they did 20 years ago. 30 years ago when I was in high school. They used to kind of guide you, and if you were going to go into the trades, hey, you could take woods, metals, autos, everything was there. Not so sure about how school is now. It's been 30 years since I've been out of high school, but again, that was a lot of knowledge that I retained that helped me later in life.
And that's good stuff, man, because I remember in high school the they had programs like that, but they weren't really the kids who went into those programs were kids who didn't necessarily jive with the traditional classroom learning. And it's something that I think, and I don't know, maybe it's going on now, I just don't know, but that they should expose a lot of all kids to, how to change your oil, how to do basic stuff on a car. I was fortunate that I had guys around me that knew how to do that stuff. And, I just kind of learned that way, how to put together things, how to fix things, but I'm by no means at your level, but I know how to do some basic stuff. But
Well, you
I
you
think it's
also
important to keep teaching that kind of stuff.
you also make a lot of connections in those groups when you start advancing. Let's say that you had taken a small engine class in high school, and you were passionate about it, and you advanced quickly through the system as I did. You start meeting like-minded people that are also interested in mechanical, and then it turns into going to a friend's house and doing a brake job or pulling an engine out, or you start you're hanging around with people. You make friends of with people that have a like mind as you, and you begin to learn off each other. And eventually, somebody's dad was a master mechanic somewhere that comes in and guides you.
It's the basics of networking, connecting with folks who are kind of heading in the same direction that you are.
Yeah, before cell phones and and then
Internet.
great neighbors too. I had a guy, Alan Johnson, that lived walking distance from my house, and he wasn't a formally trained mechanic, but God, there wasn't anything that guy didn't know. And there's some things that you can learn from school, and there's some things that you have to learn through experience. So as I was learning in school, the technical end of things, he was the guy that knew how to get a rusted bolt out, how to extract a broken bolt, he had the experience, and I was getting the book knowledge.
Well, that's great, man. So we went back to, when it started out, it was kind of a hobby. You were a systems engineer. How did it start into you fixing small engines? What and what? Tell me. I want to get into too. What's a small engine, and how big will you go, as far as what you'll take in your shop. So
Uh,
tell us about how did it develop into you doing stuff on the side of your house like I remember you used to.
Sure, yeah, that's starting with friends and neighbors. The lack of work when we had that recession, things slowed down. Wasn't getting 40 hours, with the kids coming into college, knowing I had to find another way. So it kind of started as a hobby and honestly helping a lot of my friends and neighbors. There was just an incredible need for it.
Was
Um,
one of those that you helped?
yeah, well, the more people I helped, and I didn't charge a lot. I remember doing your generator, and I spent probably 3 hours on that generator, cleaned it all up, went through it from A to Z, and I might have charged you $40, less than I made at work.
A bargain.
Uh, yeah, yeah, it was. That's the to take that and to learn how to make money from it was probably the biggest challenge. But starting out was just helping friends, family, neighbors. The biggest turning point would have came when I met an older guy. His name was Norton, and he had been in the business for 30 years. So I was so overwhelmed. I still had my full-time job. Met him from a place that was closing, and it was a goodwill gesture. He was telling me, hey, I'm losing my job. This place is closing. And I explained to him, I said, hey, I'm tired of work until 2 o'clock in the morning. You're more than welcome to come to my house, knock out some of these repairs. We'll split the difference in the profit. And it was him being in the business for 30 years that really changed the way that I looked at things. And it went from $30 lawnmowers to $100 lawnmowers immediately. And now it became worth my time to sit in that garage and work all night because I was actually making money at it.
So that was your kind of light bulb moment where you kind of thought, wow, I can actually make some dough doing this.
Yeah, when the old man was telling me, hey, this is you got to be charging $150 for this, and I said, Norton, you're crazy. Nobody's ever going to pay $100 to get their lawnmower fixed. And sure enough, everybody did, and now it became worth my time. And so now it became worth it, and the hobby started. I would say at that point started transitioning to a business. And I was doing so much. There was just an incredible need for it, and it got beyond neighbors, and people started telling other people, started telling other people. Before I knew it, I was out of room in my garage, and so I started
Yeah,
putting.
so tell me about that. I remember when I'd come by your place, and first you had stuff in the garage, and then I think you built a little structure kind of on the side.
Yeah, I did. The city didn't like that much.
Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah, they were my so the as it progressed and grew, storage in this business is always an issue or always a problem. Not everybody can pick up their machine the next day.
Right.
Sometimes you're going to sit on them 4, 5, 6, 7 days. People get busy. So the amount of machines that were coming in and that I had to store started growing. So I put up a tent I got from Harbor Freight. I think I paid $150 for it with my 20% off coupon. And the city didn't like that very much. So they came through, wrote me a couple of tickets, warned me. Um, and then at that point, I said, well, let me go to the city and tell them what I'm doing. Went before the Chamber of Commerce. I believe that was the I had filed for a home-based business permit, and they, upon doing that, they sent a letter out to all of my neighbors within, I believe it was 500 feet of where I lived. And there was a hearing for me to be able to get a home-based business permit. And it was then that I didn't really understand what I was doing to my neighbors at that point.
Hmm.
The objections were, I believe everybody within that radius of me objected to what I was doing. Now I would keep in mind I'm out there sharpening lawnmower blades at 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, that
That's
place
that's
is
not quiet, is it?
No, it's not quiet. It's very disruptive. It's not something that should have been done in a neighborhood. My original stance, I was very upset about it. You know, I said, "Hey, what? Why are my neighbors trying to kill my side job here, my hustle?" I didn't see it from their point of view that, hey, you're out here till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning making all this noise. We've got at that point landscapers started dropping off machines, and they come with big trucks and big trailers,
Hmm.
and it blocks up the street. People can't get in and out of their driveways. It had grown to a point that the working out of my house and keeping it a hobby just wasn't an option
So
anymore.
you were a little stressed there. Then to alleviate that, you found a space, and that's not where you are now. This is where you're at now is your second spot, isn't it? Or is that correct?
Well, I have multiple. We're in a type of industrial strip. I started out with what I consider these are hatcheries. They're 1,500 square foot buildings. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about that story. The transition from the town saying no, you can't do this. The neighbors saying no, you can't do this. And then I had to that forced me to make a decision at this point, the Norton had been involved where we raised the prices. This was worth doing. I seen a future in it, yet I could no longer do it out of my house. So I had to make the decision to get a space, to get a shop. And that decision came with almost a divorce with my wife. It did not go over very good. I remember her words. She says, "Wait a minute. You want to not only quit your job, you want to add a second mortgage, and you don't know how much money you make? Hey, you gotta trust me. You gotta trust me." And again, I'm seeing things from only my side of the my point of view for things. So
Right.
at that point, I had no idea if I wasn't keeping books, records, anything of that nature. I didn't know if I was making money. I knew I was eating a little bit better than I was before. I could treat her to go out to dinner, and this whole week to week paycheck thing started dissolving. Now all of a sudden, I started having to keep, $400 or $500 in the bank in case I needed a starter or a part, or you can't operate a business on no money. So it was a huge transition, a huge problem with me and the wife in the beginning. I took a side where, like, hey, you don't believe in me. And ultimately, I just did what I felt I had to do, and it worked out. But it was a big risk.
Well, anybody who, and I mean, you could ask any entrepreneur, there's always a point where they've got to take a risk. And you don't know what the future is going to hold. You can't, you've got a vision, but it's not 100% clear. But you've got it in your heart and you believe in what you're doing, and it's a little scary. So when you do make that leap, you're thinking about all the naysayers, all the reasons why it won't work. But you really got to focus on, and what you did is focus on why it will work and what's working, and then keep pushing and doing that.
Yeah,
So
you have to take the leap of faith. There's no way. I don't believe anybody has ever started a business without money, living check to check, without having to make a decision and take the jump, take the plunge, do it. Now, for me, I'm in a different position than most people in life. My wife is a nurse. She makes good money and she carries all the benefits. So I was not walking away from a pension, a 401k plan, health benefits for the children. I was just simply risking our own personal, the ability for me to earn and bring in money. With that said, I always knew I could earn. There was no way that I could not earn money. There's nothing I can't fix in your house, on your car, on your lawnmower. So that gave me the confidence, the past and the background that I had, that I'll always be able to earn money.
and that's, you and I are alike in that respect, because I've I've taken risks in doing, what I'm doing, but I've always known, and not that I think, what if I fail, that, I could always do this, but I always know that I can go out and earn. There's there's things that I can do. You know, I used to drive Uber, and you know, I didn't love that, but I did it because it was a season and I had to earn, and that's what I did.
Yep.
You know, I painted, you know, I've done a little bit of landscaping, helping guys out that I know who had landscaping businesses, you know, but I've never been afraid of hard work. And that I know that's what you're about. You know, you're not afraid to work. And that's one of the things about an entrepreneur is that they are not afraid of hard work, and they're not afraid to take risks, as we just mentioned as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
So
I don't believe most people are afraid of working hard, working long hours. Um, it's a matter of taking the jump and having the confidence in yourself that you can earn, that you can still provide for your family, that you
sure.
can still. It would have been a more difficult jump had I been the benefit provider, for having children on the medical insurance. And at that point, I think it would have really, in my particular situation, I think that would have almost broke me. I don't know what would have happened, but I know that I would have had to been able to pay for those benefits, for the health care and the insurance, and then quit my job and take on another shop. That would have been a more difficult decision. One I still think I would have made, as much as the risk has increased. I felt so confident in what I was doing that I think I would have still done it anyways, but it would have made the decision longer.
Sure. Well, thankfully, it worked out. Your business is successful. It didn't break your marriage apart.
No, no, we're still here.
It probably strengthened it even more. So that's great news, man. So you're in your place now. You've got things rolling along. You've got additional space. You're out of your home and working out of your garage, and you know, pissing off your neighbors.
Right.
Tell me, as things are moving along right now, what sort of growing pains are you having? Because it seemed like it was almost overnight that you got to where you are right now. I know that's not what happened, but I know when businesses grow that quickly, there's some challenges that come up. And tell us about maybe some of the pains or growing pains that you've had since you are now running along at full steam in the place that you're at now.
Growing the growing pains, the most painful part of it, I would say, is not having a process for what you do. I was very fortunate. The reason that the growth has developed the way that it has within the last year or two, I'll attribute a lot of it to a program that I'm a Cub Cadet dealer, and Cub Cadet pays for this program. It's called the Clemens program, and it's sort of like Marcus Lamone does in The Profit. They're very involved in outdoor power industry, and they came in and they gave us a process, and they said, this is how you do this. And everything was written out, and it changed the way that I did business. And it's been nothing but good from it. Before having a process, we did not have a set way that we did anything. It was just, we dealt with that day, a day at a time. And that makes it very difficult to grow a business when you don't know how you're going to do what you're going to do. So I would say the most painful part was probably in the beginning, establishing pay for the employees, what they're worth. These are all my friends that are working for me from high school. The majority of them are.
So
And,
how many people are working for you right now?
there's currently 7. If I include myself, I am an employee of the company. 7. There's 7 people. Me, my son, I have 3 mechanics, a driver, a manager, and now recently, because of COVID-19, I turned my systems technician into my service manager.
All right, that's part 1 of my chat with Ricco Bertoletti, owner of Ricco's Repair Service. We'll continue the conversation next week, so be sure to check in, and Ricco will share more of his story.